Welcome to another episode of First Chapter Friday. My name is Lucy, and the book that I am going to be reading, the first chapter of today, is called Austen Lived Here by Gino. This book is the story of a seventh grader named Sam and their best friend TJ. They live on Staten Island in New York. Sam and TJ are both non-binary, and a contest opens up in Staten Island in order to build a new statue. And what this contest involves is kids in schools in Staten Island can come up with the idea of a project about an important historical figure to Staten Island. Whoever's project wins, the person that project is about, is also who the statue will be of. And this is assigned to the seventh graders at Sam's school by their history teacher to be part of it. So it also becomes a history project where they pair up. So Sam and TJ pair up to come up with an important historical figure from Staten Island who they feel deserves to have a statue. Throughout the exploration of finding this historical figure, we learn more about Sam's family and TJ's family and the people who live in Sam's building. So as they start to think about who they would like to do this project on, they realize that they want to look for someone who better represents them. So maybe someone queer, someone who is not a cis male. And they discover that there was a woman named Alice Austen who was a lesbian, and she was a photographer and a local celebrity. Alice Austen didn't use the term lesbian herself, but she had a female partner. Their relationship spanned over 50 years. Language does change, and that's one thing that this book speaks really well about is language and how people choose which words they would like to present themselves with and how we use language in a sensitive and evolving way. So TJ and Sam start to research the life of Alice Austen. Alice Austen was a real person who did, in fact, live in Staten Island. She was a photographer and a local celebrity, and she did have a partnership with a female that spanned over 50 years. In the back of the book, there are pictures of the real Alice Austen, and the author writes a great note about some of the history surrounding Alice Austen, and also the history of queer people in general and how often those stories are erased or overlooked. But one thing that this book does is reiterates the fact that queer people have always existed. They just haven't always been written into our history. So that is what Alice Austen Lived Here is about, and I'm going to read you the first chapter where we meet Sam. Chapter 1. I can see the Statue of Liberty from my bedroom window. I'm not trying to brag, it's just true. My view is of New York Bay, with New Jersey sprawled out on the left side, downtown Manhattan poking up into the sky on the right, and between them, there she is, Lady Liberty. She's not close enough to be able to see her face clearly without binoculars, but she's an unmistakable green spot in the water. She has 7 spikes on her crown, I told TJ as we lay on my bed one afternoon, leaning our elbows on the windowsill. Some people say it's to match the 7 continents or the 7 seas. Other people say it's supposed to be the rays of the sun. But then why would there be 7 of them? And she's in the water. It's got to be the seas. TJ looked at me with one eyebrow raised and one lowered. Since when are you an expert on the Statue of Liberty? Since I watched a video online with Jess. TJ's dark hair fell onto their forehead in perfect ringlets that barely reached their thick-framed glasses. They wore black jeans and a magenta button-down shirt that brought out the rosy hint of their angular tan face. As for me, I wore one of my many black t-shirts that Mom said washed out my round, pale face. My dirty, blonde, turning to brown hair was cut shorter than I would have liked, the effects of an unpleasant gender experiment that I was still waiting to grow out. My shirt was from Joe and Pat's, hands down the best pizza place on Staten Island. According to my hands, anyway. TJ's family swore by Nunzio's. We lived on Staten Island, the forgotten borough of New York City. Staten Island is nearly the size of Brooklyn, but with 1/5 the population. Home of the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, the minor league Yankees, and of course, the Staten Island Ferry. In other words, a place known for ways to leave it. And if you've ever seen a map of New York, where there's a little bump on the bottom left corner that the map maker didn't bother drawing the rest of, just enough to let the ferry dock before it heads back to Manhattan. That's the little bit of Staten Island we lived on. Okay, if you know everything about the Statue of Liberty, which hand is the book in? TJ asked. Easy, her left. Are you sure? 100%. But how can you know? Because she's holding the torch with her right. You're good. Most people get tripped up when you ask them about details like that. I'll bet my dad doesn't even know. TJ's dad was a trivia buff as well as a professional chef. Yeah, well, your dad doesn't have a personal view. TJ's family lived in a house a block away, and their bedroom view was of their backyard, a patchy green square with a large oak tree filling up the center. My building was 5 stories tall, plus a basement. So technically, we lived in a penthouse, but really, it was just a regular 2-bedroom apartment in an old brick building. 141 St. Mark's Place, apartment 5C. I hadn't been able to say my address without it sing-songing out of my mouth ever since I was little and had to memorize it along with Mom's cell phone number, just in case I got lost. 141 St. Mark's Place, apartment 5C. I told TJ more of what I'd learned. There are 354 steps up to the top. Well, to her crown anyway. No one's been allowed to climb to the top of the torch since she got hit with shrapnel from an explosion around World War I. Why do you keep calling them she, anyway? How do you know what pronouns the statue uses? TJ is the only person I know who's more careful about pronouns than I am. Well, she is called Lady Liberty, I pointed out. Not all ladies are women. True, they could be a non-binary drag queen. They are wearing a tiara after all. Now that would be amazing. TJ stood and put my baseball hat on their head with the bill popped up. They grabbed a unicorn coloring book to hold in their left arm and raised a pencil in their right. No puny gender can hold me back. I am no mere man or woman. I mix liberty, and I light the way for you. TJ and I were the only non-binary kids in our grade, at least as far as we knew. That's not why we were best friends. And being best friends wasn't why we were both NB, no matter what TJ's grandmother thought. It was just one of the many things we had in common. We both lived on the same street, loved graphic novels, and thought the pop star Miss Chris was the coolest ever. We always had something to talk about, and when we didn't, our silence was the comfortable kind. We loved to make boxed mac and cheese together, gluten-free because TJ was allergic to wheat, and eat it with tiny fish forks and candlelight, pretending it was the fanciest item on the menu at the chicest French restaurant. We were even both born in October, and the previous year we'd had a combination Halloween birthday party in TJ's backyard. My phone barked. Technically, it was the alarm set to a barking ringtone, but either way, it was dog walking time. The pug, Nacious, lived downstairs with Miss Hanson, an old woman with short white hair and a friendly laugh. Miss Hanson gave Nacious her daily walks, but TJ and I were responsible for taking her out on Sundays to really tire her out. Ready? I asked TJ, who jumped up in response. They liked Nacious more than I did. TJ loved all dogs, even the big and growly ones. They said it was all in the eyes. I said I was a cat person, but I made exceptions, especially for dogs like Nacious, who weren't very dog-like at all. We raced down the stairs to Miss Hanson's first-floor apartment. Miss Hanson didn't have a view of the Statue of Liberty, since her windows were too close to the ground to see the water. All she could see was the back of the building behind us. Miss Hanson met us at the door with Nacious already on her leash. We grabbed some tennis balls and set out down the block for the yard next to the stone church, with its hill that we made Nacious run up and down as we tossed the tennis balls at each other. Neither of us had very good aim, but luckily Nacious liked to run after the ball and bring it back to TJ for tug of war. She knew not to bring it to me. Maybe she was happy, or maybe she was frustrated. It was hard to say. Like I said, I wasn't really a dog person. We walked back to 141 St. Mark's Place with Nacious. I know every crack in the walkway to the entrance, the musty smell of the mailbox area in the outer lobby, and the number of stairs between each floor. I thought I knew a lot about the place, but I had no idea there was history to be discovered. Not just any history, queer history. And that is the end of chapter 1. Staten Island features prominently in this book since that's where it takes place, and it really becomes a character of its own. I enjoyed that as a setting because I think that a lot of books are written about New York and many of its boroughs, but not a lot about people who live in Staten Island. TJ and Sam are really fun characters to follow throughout this book, and as a reader, you get to learn about the life of Alice Austen, and you also get to learn about the lives of other people who interact with TJ and Sam. There are great explorations of gender in this book, and as I said before, the language that we use around them, and how important it is for people to have access to words that they feel describe them. So that is Alice Austen Lived Here by Alex Gino. It was a really fun book to read. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I hope that you give it a try. Thank you for joining me.